So, thank you for joining us for a very unique episode of our Eternal Feminine podcast series. Today, we are actually speaking with a relative of our featured composer, Amice Calverley.
So now, we originally found Miss Calverley as we were researching Canadian women composers whose works were in the public domain. And we were looking through the Canadian Music Libraries, the Canadian Music Centre's library, and we found a number of works by her in their collection. And anyhow, we thought it would be kind of nice because we were opening with a lullaby to close also with a lullaby, so it's kind of symmetrical. And so we purchased a copy of Cradle Song, which we will be recording for this.
So we began to research Miss Calverley, and we found out that she lived most of her life here in Oakville, which is where I live. And so with some further digging, we discovered that she still has relatives in the area. And so today we're very fortunate to be speaking with Miss Calverley's niece, Sybil Rampen, who is herself an artist and teacher and author. She founded the Joshua Creek Heritage Art Center here in Oakville, and you've even been featured in a few documentaries, I think. So welcome, Sybil, to our humble podcast, and we're very grateful and feel very fortunate to be speaking with you today. So maybe to begin with, could you tell us a bit more about Amice Calverley's family? So we know that there's been multiple generations of artistic people in your family. Was she the first musician?
I was thinking about that, but actually my grandmother was a whistler.
Oh.
Her sister was a Bach.
What singer. Is that?
She sang Bach.
Oh, Bach, okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And her great-grandmother, she was the wife of Osbert Salvin, who was the editor of 65 books on Central America called the Biologia Central America.
Right.
She was also a pianist.
Okay.
I discovered that. So the family have been quite musical.
Sounds like it.
And I was very encouraged. Once I gave a concert, but now I don't play at all. But I studied with lovely people like Mary Shore and Clifford Poole.
Really, wow! So it's quite a musical and artistic heritage in the family.
And my father loved music; it was very important to him. So Amice actually was very lazy. And my mother, who was the governess, said she would be playing scales, but she was actually reading a book.
I don't know, it sounds like multitasking there.
But anyway, she was quite a lot of her music was written when she studied with Healy Willan. But it was a miracle that she had a scholarship to London, and she really worked very, very hard with Vaughan Williams. But she had to support herself, and you can't support yourself by being a composer. So that's when she got a job using her art. That was her other thing. She spoke many languages, I think 27. And she was an incredible artist. Her mother was an artist and trained her. And she got a job illustrating a book at the Griffith Institute for Professor Child. And this led into getting an opportunity to go to Egypt. And she replaced a woman who'd had a nervous breakdown because of the isolation. And she was supposed to close up the camp, which was a mile in the desert. But Rockefeller came along and he became very interested in her as a person. And he offered to fund a huge project of copying all the frescoes in this wonderful tomb, in conjunction with the Oriental Institute of Chicago. So that became her life's work. So she never gave up her music. She had a clavichord made so she could take it into the temple. And it had golden strings. It was small. I used to play. She let me play on it. And it took me away. But she would play in the temple on her clavichord. She has a huge collection of musical instruments, Greek ones, funny ones. So she was flutes and all kinds of funny things. And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have her collection of records, which is like over 50 years old. And I keep thinking they might be of interest to a lot of people because I have them in boxes here. So I have a lot of records.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's sort of our next question. Amice Calverley is primarily known for her work in Egyptology, and also she did a lot of humanitarian work, it seems. But how did she view her music? Was she still composing after she did her work in Egypt, or was she
Yes,
solely
she would
focused on
make
that?
she made little legends and spent Christmas cards with little musical songs in them. So I have,
Oh, nice.
Oh,
yeah, music. And in her loft, she had very wonderful recording so she could listen to music. She spent a lot of her life music was her first love, but
Mm-hmm.
she had to earn her living. And then
Right.
through her Egyptology, she met kings and queens and princesses. And through her, but during the war, she was in the British intelligence. And because she had driven so often from Egypt across the continents, she knew. So she was helped with the Battle of Alamein in Africa because she knew the territory.
Wow.
And
Wow.
then
right.
she was thrown out of Egypt. And I found out what had happened is that an English woman had married a very high up Egyptian. And my aunt asked permission to make films based on the hieroglyphics of baking and plowing and stuff. And so she had all the proper permits, but this woman said, I want to do that.
Ah.
So she had left her truck behind. She just suddenly packed everything up and she put all her films in diplomatic bags and left Egypt and broke her heart.
Yeah. Wow.
So she went to Greece and then she got involved with the Greek Civil War. So she was in the front line of the battle with Albania.
Mm-hmm.
And she manned the first aid station with Greek doctors and she gave her blood. And she also made a film called Who Dares Victory? And this was shown on the Britannia to Prince Philip. And in Greece, she was invited, her friends were invited to the palace to have dinner with the king and queen. Oh, she said, I'll come along. Oh, you don't have an evening gown. Oh, yes, I do. So she trotted off and had dinner with the king and queen. And they got rid of everybody but my aunt, and they kept her on because they were so fascinated. She was a fascinating, incredible woman with courage beyond belief.
It really, I mean, she sounds like a remarkable woman. There's so much written about her. It's hard to believe she did it in a relatively short lifetime as well.
She was gifted with a photographic. Her father had a photographic mind, and she had a photographic mind and an incredible ear.
Mm-hmm.
But she could be pretty rotten sometimes. She actually wrote a letter to my parents saying, Sybil has no talent. Bring her home and get her to work. Judgmental. But I loved her so much. And when she died, I almost had a breakdown because I couldn't believe I'd never told her how much I loved her. And
Oh.
that made me sad.
Mm-hmm.
She was my greatest inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
So I studied art and archaeology. And I have spent 50 years collecting all her material together and trying to write a book about her. And
Wow.
I put all her musical stuff in this music center for protection because I didn't want it to get lost.
Mm-hmm.
I think I still own it though. They are guardians of it.
Mm-hmm.
And she did write a huge opera.
Yeah, that was one of our questions we've seen references to this opera, but we didn't see it in the Music Center's catalog.
Well, I think it's there because they have it, but it weighed about 50 pounds and it's called Hell. And I took it to an expert and he said she killed off the heroine in the first act, which wasn't too clever. But it did have some very lovely pieces of music. The musicality was lovely. And
I wonder if they just haven't been able to scan it in since it's such a big work.
It's huge.
Yeah.
But she actually, in her will, left it to Sir Ernest Macmillan, who was her dearest friend.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't want it. So I bought it. So I felt the best place for everything. Her music stuff was, they're lovely people, and I felt it would be safe there.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great resource. Um,
Mhm.
so I guess did she keep any records of how she was writing her music? Like we think that probably the text for Cradle Song was she wrote herself.
She wrote poetry.
Uh-huh.
She was a tremendous writer. She also was very scientific in her writing, but she was also very romantic in her
Hmm.
writing. And I do have a file filled with her poetry. If
Wow.
you come,
Okay.
you can look
Oh,
at see her poetry.
Hmm.
There wasn't anything. She also was studied dressmaking in New York, and she could take a piece of cloth and turn it into a beautiful outfit in no time flat.
oh wow.
You know, she wasn't anything she could, and she loved flowers and made beautiful gardens. And she painted the house outside of her house, and she architecture. I mean, there wasn't anything she couldn't do. But I was delighted to discover there were two things made her human. She was terrified of spiders, and she got seasick.
Oh,
Just take her off the pedestal a little bit.
She had very curly hair, and her very curly hair was the bane of her life. And she would roll a chiffon scarf around her head and then sort of tuck all the silly curls into it. She found
oh.
that she was an extraordinary, incredible woman.
Hmm.
She had a huge influence on me,
It sounds like it.
and
It
I
sounds
kind
like
of
it.
ended up with her house, even though I have three brothers and a sister, and it was fairly accidental how it happened. But I'm sure she was managing things from heaven to make sure, because I was the only one equipped to deal with any of her stuff.
Hmm.
Two brothers were veterinarians and sister's a nurse, and nobody was very interested in
Hmm.
artistic stuff except me.
Hmm.
So I'm doing my best. I'm still working on her. I have two women who are working on the files once a week. They still come in slowly working through drawers of them.
Wow.
Oh
So,
wow.
I think I read that there's actually some of her, I guess, belongings are at the Joshua Creek Center. Is that right?
Yeah, they're all here. Yes.
Okay, okay. Oh, that's where you are right now, is there?
No, I'm in the house.
Oh, okay, okay.
The actual center is an 1827 barn, and it's a gallery,
Hmm.
and it has sort of reception rooms so we can have weddings and things. And upstairs is the library.
Oh, okay.
When I had to sell her house,
Hmm.
I thought I took 6 dumpsters of garbage, but I kept all her total collection was transported, including a 1797 Broadwood piano that was
Oh
given
wow.
by Dr. Griffiths. So and she once had it playable, and Sir Ernest Macmillan and Ira Hess, I think, played on it. It was quite an extraordinary concert.
Hmm. Actually, could you tell us a bit more about, so we read that she had salons at her house. Do you
Yeah,
have any memories of
she
those?
died. I think she died because of a concert. She invited May Muckley, who was a very well-known cellist
Hmm.
from England, and she organized that she would have a concert at Appleby and also in her loft, because she laid out, she had 100 chairs so people could sit on like wings of her. And she rolled up all the carpets for the concert, and then she took May Muckley over to Appleby for her concert, and then she fell over with an aneurysm.
Oh, goodness.
Oh no. Oh.
Yeah, so I was thought, maybe it was the wrong thing to be rolling up carpets. She was
Maybe,
only
yes.
62, but I guess her time was up. But she was very lucky that she was able to live through what she lived through.
Hmm.
And she had iritis, which was terrible because her eyes were not working very well anymore with whatever
Oh.
iritis is.
Hmm.
And she was 62, and she was taken to Women's College Hospital. And I drove my mother up to see her, and she was there And she looked at my mother and she said, "Oh, Diggy, you've come and it's my birthday." And that's the last she ever spoke.
Oh.
But we were so happy that she adored my mom. My mom was her governess who taught her German and French in South Africa.
Wow.
They came to Oakville in 1912. And they loved Oakville, really. And I have incredible lot of letters from her and my grandfather and everybody. So I have a huge collection of family history stuff. And I have two granddaughters, both who have MAs in English. So maybe they'll help someday.
Hopefully.
One granddaughter did a time chart, 100-page time chart of my aunt.
Oh, wow.
I paid her.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, any other questions that I can answer? If I
You've actually kind of answered all of our things in a
there's
different
something
way.
I should mention.
Yes.
I was studying art in Paris, and Amice asked if I would like to go to Patmos, to the monastery of St. John the Theologian, to make a film record of their Passion play, which was very like the Byzantine original Passion plays.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
my brother and I accompanied her across Europe, camping in ditches, starving ourselves to death in her way of travel, we were on deck passage for a day and a night, and we got to Patmos, and then we had to load all this huge pile of equipment on donkeys, and we went up a mile up the mountain, and then we spent 2 weeks in this monastery. It was the most incredible experience of my life. And all that material has been taken by the Paul Getty people because they purchased where I had stored it for safety, and it's in California, and I don't know what's happened to it.
Oh, no.
But it was an incredible, extraordinary experience. She also took me to New York to meet Rockefeller, which was also an extraordinary experience. So she really was an amazing woman. When I had a broken leg, she would put me in front of her clavichord and drawers from her treasure chest to play with. That's such a treat. So I have wonderful memories of her.
Yeah.
And appreciation. And I feel very responsible. I feel that she's entrusted me with her collection, which is enormous.
I mean, that's sort of something we wanted to ask you more about. I mean, what was it like growing up? Because, for instance, Rockefeller was among her friends, but what was it like growing up in that kind of atmosphere? You know, were you aware of her fame, I guess, when you were young?
Well, she disappeared, and my father would get quite worried about her. My mother would shrug her shoulders and say, "No, she's Amice. You can't do a thing about it." She would suddenly arrive with a huge mountain of treasures, including sugarcane sticks. So you know what sugarcane sticks, but incredible things that she gathered. She just as the war started, she drove from Egypt to England, and Princess Babesco gave her a letter of introduction to the Romanians, and she collected 800 pieces of Romanian embroidery, which she gave to the realm because the war was coming and she knew it would be destroyed. Every frontier, as the war started getting know it, she'd whiz through, and she got to England 3 days before the war started.
Wow.
And all that material is at the realm, but they've hidden
it. Yeah, I did see there was a donation from her to the ROM. Interesting.
Yeah. She's fascinated by things of beauty, by folk art, by wonderful people. She just was extraordinary aunt, and makes you feel sort of inadequate. She felt that we were farm children. We were farmed. I was a farm child with bare feet and mud and cows. And so the contrast of being a farm child and also having this amazing aunt, I sort of had two worlds that I existed in. And I studied art and archaeology because of her and art. But she was my mentor.
Wow.
And I hope you sing nicely for her.
Yes, we'll do our best. It's a lovely little piece. The one that we've chosen is just very sweet, and I think, the Eternal Feminine concert series that I started was supposed to be women's perspectives on different aspects of our lives, and so obviously lullabies is a huge part of being a woman, I think, and mother, and so it just seemed perfect to end our series with. Um, how can our listeners find out more about Ms. Calverley's life and works? You said you're working on a book,
Yeah,
hopefully sometime.
I hope, I'm 91, but I've been working on it for 50 years. But she also loved men, and she was engaged 3 times.
Oh, wow.
And before she was 31, she'd had 19 proposals because she was quite beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother said she was definitely not marriage material.
She sounds like a free spirit to me.
I think she was sad. She would have loved to have had children, but I think she was a person who had to follow her passion, which was music and art and saving the world and folk art and adventure and courage. Oh, and a gypsy once told her that she would die in bed. So that's why she was never afraid of anything.
Ah.
We would be sleeping in a ditch in Yugoslavia. At 3 a.m, peasants would start walking by. Car would be parked, and we had our camp beds in a ditch. And they would stop, and I expected our throats to be cut any minute. But nothing bothered her. It bothered me. I was terrified. Once we came to a place by a river, and you could feel it had been a bloodbath. And she wanted to stay there, camp there, and I absolutely refused. No. And then she discovered there'd been a terrible battle there, a lot of killing.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
So she listened for a change. But she was a truly incredible, special lady.
It certainly sounds that way. I think you shared a wealth of information. Just, it's nice to hear. We like to share, kind of behind the scenes with our listeners, things that you don't read in the normal biographies. And so this is a very rare treat for us. And so I guess we'll close, and want to thank you so much, Sybil, for sharing your time and your memories with us. And
Thank you.
yes, and we will send you a link as soon as this is up on Saturday. And
That's lovely. Thank you so much.
Go.
I love talking about her.
Well,
and I'll send you some pictures.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.